Chapter 2. Eddie readied himself for another one of Blair's hugs when a sharp, stabbing pain pulsed through his head, and everything went dark. A moment later, he opened his eyes and found himself standing in a large, dark room lit only by blue light flickering through the walls. It reminded him of the movie Tron, but not so angular. The light moved through the walls like small bolts of lightning. He surveyed the room to see if there was any immediate threat. The room wasn't too hot or too cold. It had no distinct smell to it either. He went to look around, but nothing happened. He couldn't move. He wondered if he had a stroke or a seizure. He stood there for what he thought was an hour when two shadowy figures appeared. They seemed to float over to him and stopped a few feet away, keeping their appearance hidden. Eddie squinted his eyes. They almost looked like aliens, at least what everyone says aliens are supposed to look like. But something was off. "We are the Eoch," said the figure on the right. "You are our champion," the left figure said. Eddie heard them clear as day, but their mouths didn't move. Did they even have mouths? He couldn't tell. They spoke directly into his brain. "What do you mean, champion? Where am I? And who are you?" Eddie demanded. He continued to struggle against his invisible restraints. "We are the Eoch," the first figure said again. And again, the other one said, "You are our champion." Eddie's head spun with confusion. None of this made any sense. Aliens were something that tinfoil hat guys believed in. They weren't really real. Maybe this was just a reaction to his medicine. The two aliens started to make strange clicking noises, and Eddie heard this with his ears, not his mind this time. The aliens began to vibrate. Small sparks of the same blue energy from the walls emitted off their hands. They vibrated even faster and fused into one. The sole alien pointed at Eddie. "All will be revealed." Energy bolts erupted from its fingers and engulfed Eddie in an electric blue cocoon. His entire body tingled and vibrated like his captors. No sooner had the beam hit him than he fell and hit the sidewalk. "Call 911, Blair shouted. Lester ran over to him but stopped short. "You think he's electrified? Eddie, are you all right?" Eddie lay where he had fallen and took stock of how he felt. "I don't see any blood. I don't feel sore or burnt, and my shoes are still on." He had seen the effects of lightning damage firsthand in Los Angeles when he was at the scene of an accident. A man tried to finish up a home improvement project just as a storm rushed through, and boom! Second-degree burns on his neck and arm where he was hit. His shoes blown off as the lightning exited him. Unfortunately, the man didn't survive. And while Eddie still wasn't sure what exactly happened to him, he knew he didn't want to go to the hospital. Wooziness pressed its way in. The street became a beehive of activity. People pushed in to take pictures and videos of Eddie. Lester heard sirens in the distance. Eddie struggled to get to his feet. "Help me up. I'm not going to the hospital. I don't want to be here when they show up," he said. Lester went to his brother. He wanted to do the right thing, but he didn't want to get on his brother's bad side. He and Blair helped Eddie into his car, and they left the scene as fast as they could. Eddie was in and out of consciousness on the drive home. They maneuvered him through the living room into his bedroom. When they dropped him on the bed, he started to mumble. It was difficult to understand. It sounded like one side of a conversation. Blair turned off the light, and they both walked back to the living room. Lester kicked off his shoes and sat down on the sofa. "Aren't we going to do anything?" Blair asked. "Nope. He wants to do things the hard way." Lester put his hands up. "He's never liked hospitals. I'm not about to have him wake up in one and realize I'm the guy who made that decision." Blair returned his look with one of concern. If he wakes up at all. Eddie's knees buckled. He braced himself for the fall, expecting a hard landing. "What is this? Like some kind of spongy mat?" he said. He looked up, and no one was around. Instead of seeing the inside of his house, there was a vast expanse of space. This was not Earth's sky. It couldn't be. With a sickly green moon and countless spaceships firing on each other, this had to be a dream. As he got back to his feet, one of the ships exploded, causing him to fall again. He brought his hands up to protect himself, but the debris passed through him as if he were a ghost. Eddie patted himself down and felt for any injuries or blood, but there was nothing. He got up again and found himself floating through the wreckage. Now he was sure this was a dream. No heat emanated from the fires around the downed ship, and it was eerily quiet. Eddie pulled at his ears, thinking they might be clogged. "There's nothing wrong with you, human." Eddie spun around to find a large blue ball floating in front of him. It flickered with electricity like the interior of the alien ship. He reached out to touch it, and a bolt flew off. "Ow!" He shook his hand, trying to lose the tingling sensation. "Well, something seems real here. You must have a lot of questions." Before Eddie could answer, 2 tentacles grew out of it. They reached out and touched his head. Another shock went through him, and the vision of warring spaceships vanished. In its place was empty space, nothing but stars and swirling galaxies. Eddie's stomach churned at the sudden shift. "What is going on?" he asked. He felt small electric shocks at his temples. The thought of this being a dream quickly faded. Now he was sure he was going mad. "You are fine, human. You are not losing your mind." "Then what's happening to me?" Eddie tried to reach up and remove the tentacles, but his arms were forced down to his sides. "You have been chosen to fight for the glory of the Eoch Empire. Abducted is more like it. Call it what you will. You have been picked to act as the Eoch's champion. You should feel honored. With over 7 billion humans on this planet, you were chosen." Eddie attempted to move again, but his arms and legs were frozen. "So I was chosen," he said. "What does being the champion mean?" The orb started to pulse. The energy coming off it increased, and once again the view turned back to the battle he saw before. As far back as time itself, the Eoch and Thiar waged war. 2 great empires wanting nothing more than to defeat the other and expand their reach. Over and over, one side would gain the advantage, only to have the other match it and retake control. The war came to a standstill. The Eoch and the Thiar had become equal, and nothing either side did could move the other. Eddie watched as the fighting overhead played out along with the orb's narration. Ships of all sizes came into sight, only to be destroyed. Countless lives lost. What a waste. With the war being deadlocked, the 2 sides sent emissaries to discuss ways of breaking the stalemate. A solution was found. It was not accepted right away, but as both sides continued to lose resources and citizens, they came to an agreement. It was called the Omega Solution. The scene adjusted again. Eddie still wasn't used to the sudden change of view. He thought about the wildest roller coaster he ever rode. This was infinitely worse. Planets and stars whizzed past him. It picked up in speed until everything was a blur of light. The scene stopped abruptly, and Eddie thought he was about to fly off into space. His body jerked and his knees felt like they would give out, but the orb kept him on his feet. Once he got over the change of scenery, he recognized the planet they stopped at. Earth. The Omega Solution called for both sides to search the universe for a planet far outside their borders, one that was underdeveloped and primitive. They didn't want to encounter any hostile aliens that might hinder their plans. This planet was selected. "This planet is Earth. Are you saying that out of all the known universe, Earth is the most primitive? The orb simply continued. Once here, each side chose a being to be their champion. The process of choosing was not random. You were chosen not only for your sense of fairness, but your deep, dark, pathological scar. Eddie laughed. My what? You know exactly what we are referring to. There is a darkness in you. The Eoch feel this will give you a keen focus. Eddie stopped smiling and took a deep breath. How could they know about that? He did everything he could to hide it from everyone, even himself. Yet somehow, the Eoch were able to drill down into his psyche and pull up the most secret parts of his soul. The orb, as usual, did not elaborate. And combatants are altered to give them an advantage. I thought you said they were deadlocked. How can they give anyone an advantage? While the Eoch and Thiar are equal in battle, you humans are not. Your species possess a savage unpredictability that will aid in combat. Eddie hung his mouth open in shock. Hearing that he was chosen because he was, in essence, a wild savage, was more than he could handle. He struggled harder to free himself, but the orb increased the electricity. His head flung backward and his jaw clenched up. The orb released its hold, and Eddie fell to his hands and knees. The ground still had a soft, spongy feel, and he was grateful for that. The champion who emerges victorious will determine which side finally wins the war. The Eoch and Thiar will have their armadas orbiting your world. The winner will open fire and eliminate the other. They will be eradicated from the universe, leaving the victor to return and claim the other's empire for themselves. And what happens to us? Eddie struggled to get to his feet. He stared at the orb as it bobbed up and down like a beach ball in a pool. Well, he rolled his eyes as the orb stayed silent. All that, and you have no answer?